28th at 7 o'clock, and the meeting is now called to order. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Larry, you have some minutes from April. Has everybody had a chance to look at them, or you want to wait on them? I know they only went out yesterday, so.
I'll wait.
Okay.
I'll sign them next month.
Okay. So we'll hold off on the minutes. I had looked at them, but I was kind of a little slow on that, so Larry will digest them and spit them out.
I'll put it in the food processor.
Okay. All right, so we have, on our agenda tonight, we have, on the printed agenda, we have a new business item which we'll take first, which is pertinent to 674 Turnpike Street. And then since then, I've added on one other place. Help me with the address there.
1353?
1353, and that's Salem Street, correct? That's this party here. So this is Jack. Maybe we'll let you come to the podium if you're going to represent the property and speak.
Sure.
For the record, my name's Jack Sullivan. I'm owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group. I'm here with the property owner, Mohammed Yamin of 674 Turnpike Street. And I'm here before the board. I need some variances and some local upgrade approvals for a septic upgrade plan that I designed at 674 Turnpike Street. I just want to give the board a little bit of history on this project, and then I'll go into the design work that was done. This property was bought at auction through a bank. It had a failed Title V performed. The owner was under an enforcement order to upgrade the system. I was contacted, and immediately I looked at the ability to try to connect to town sewage if it was available. There is a sewer pump station 500 feet away from this property. So originally I started looking into doing a sewer force main to connect to that sewer pump station. In the process of doing that design work, DPW changed their policy. They used to allow individual force mains for property owners to run individual force mains in the shoulder of the right-of-way down to some sort of gravity system. They changed their policy. They basically discontinued allowing sewer force mains for individual property owners. The only thing he could do is extend a 8-inch gravity sewer line up to his property, which was totally cost prohibitive. So we had to go in a whole different direction, and that brought the septic design back to the table. And the reason it took so long to get to this point is mostly my fault, because I started with the sewer design, then we went to the septic. My workload got extremely busy, so the property owner has been diligent in trying to get a plan before the board. It's more on my end. I got so busy, and with the change of direction in the design, it took a little while to get to this point. So now onto the site. As I stated, there's an existing failed system. We scheduled soil testing. I went out with Mill River, and Isaac Rowe from Mill River came out with me on behalf of the town to witness the soil testing. What we basically found is an extremely high groundwater table. There was some fill, obviously, on the site. So to get down to the area that we needed to perk, we couldn't. It was in the water table, and there was a fill layer that prevented us getting down to the sea layer to do our perk test. So what we're asking for the board tonight is I took a sieve analysis, a soil sample, sent it to a laboratory, had a sieve analysis done. A classification was determined for the soils in accordance with Title V. That paperwork was provided as part of the review to the town and to Mill River when I did the design plan. And a percolation rate was assigned based on soil type only. There was no field percolation tests that could run.
So for my own education, Jack, so you say a fill layer, that was somewhere along the line of the construction a builder or town, when they're doing the street or something, they put in a layer of dirt that just doesn't match the,
Right.
what's going on in the area.
Probably back in the history, when this site was built, it was probably all a wetland. And then when they built the house, it was filled. And so when we went out to do the soil testing, I don't think it, maybe it did have to do something with Route 114, but probably way back when this house was built, it was just, they brought fill in to basically develop the site, you know? But I have to get down to a naturally occurring soil condition to run a perk test, and it was impossible because I was in the water table. And that fill layer, you know, I forget how much fill was on site, but it might have been 2 or 3 feet, so there was no possible way to run the perk test. Title V does allow you to do a sieve analysis, but it does require a local upgrade approval to do so. Then things got worse, because then I actually had the wetland line flagged, and there was an old wetland filing done by GovCAM, and I tried to use their flags basically to try to save on some of the costs, because I knew this system would be expensive. But when we filed with the Conservation Commission, Jennifer Hughes, who's the agent for the town, rightfully thought the line might have to move up gradient based on where hydric soils were on the site, and the flags even got closer to our limit of work. And as you can see on the design plan, one of the existing leaching pits for the septic is actually in the wetland. So it's not a surprise that the system's failed.
Which is, where is that then?
If you look at where flag 10A is on the plan, if you see a 10A, there's a cesspool or a leaching pit. It's either an overflow cesspool or some type of leaching pit that's in the established wetland now. So I basically went through 2 meetings with Conservation already on this. Originally, when I went in, they wanted to talk to DPW they didn't really want a septic system to go on this property. They wanted to see this connected to sewer, which I explained to them was my original intention all along. The chairman went and spoke to DPW, to Tim Willett, and Tim sent an email to everybody saying, you know, the force mains would not be allowed. So Conservation basically has approved the plan that you've seen in front of you. We have an order of conditions for this project. Mill River had done a review. There were some comments they wanted to see made, and with the adjustment of the wetland lines, some of my buffers, wetland buffers had adjusted, so that's why we went to Conservation. They reluctantly approved it. There really was nothing else that could be done. I did everything I could do on this site to try to be as far away from the wetlands without being out onto Route 114. A second review went into Mill River. There was another $75 fee for some of the changes. I believe they're comfortable with the design. I know I've talked to Michelle and Susan about it as well. But what I tried to do is I put in a microfast system to provide a level of denitrification. There'll be a pump system. I'm looking to get a 1-foot reduction in the separation from the bottom of the soil absorption system to the seasonal high groundwater. The reason for that is even with a pump system, there's some existing large trees right along the property line, and I wanted to limit the amount of site disturbance with wetlands. I have a 25-foot no disturbance zone. By getting that 1-foot reduction, I can basically match the existing grade on the site. Without having to impact any of the trees or do too much transitional site grading that would potentially go into some of the into the wetland buffers. I'm basically using a infiltrator system. It's an existing 3-bedroom house. That's what's going back. And I'm looking for some relief on the property line setback. Title V and your local bylaws require 10 feet. I'm asking for 6 feet, and by allowing the 6 feet, that gives me the 50-foot setback from the closest point of the soil absorption system to the wetland flag. Your local rules require 100 feet. The best I can do is 50. The state code is 50. Additionally, I need a variance from the septic tank to the wetland line. State code is 25 feet. The town code is...
75.
Correct, 75 feet. And as you can see, you can see where the 50-foot buffer falls for this. The entire site's within 100 feet. I do have There's a water service that enters the building on the left-hand side that's shown on the plan. So, and I'm also looking for relief. I'm only 16 feet from the foundation of the building, not the 20 feet that's required. So that's another local upgrade approval that I need as well. But I do, at first I thought I was going to need some sort of relief from the state code as well, but I had mistakenly put the 50-foot buffer in, and I made an offset of a line I shouldn't have, so it wasn't as bad as I thought. Originally, I thought I was going to be like 35 feet from a wetland with my soil absorption system, but Heidi Gaffney of the Conservation Commission said, I think you made one mistake, which I did, and I corrected it. So I'm in compliance with all the state regulations, but that's why I'm here in front of you tonight for local relief on the items I outlined. I tried to put an email together to Lisa, spelling out the variance request, what's required, what's provided, and also the 4 local upgrade approvals that I just spoke about, but I put them in a summation for the board so that they could ask any questions and hopefully approve the project. I know this is the toughest project I've ever worked on as far as relief. I've never had a situation like this before, so I basically said the same thing to Conservation. They said, well, we don't have much of a choice. I mean, we have a failed septic system now. It's in a wetland. I'm making it a better situation. Even the septic tank, I moved further away from the existing septic tank. The existing septic tank's closer to the wetland. So I'm making improvements all around. I know it's not ideal, and I know the board looking at this has to look at each project on its own merit. I don't think you'd be setting any sort of precedent. I'm in a very difficult site with difficult site conditions, and I really did the best I could with the design. I'll turn it over to the board if you have any questions.
The difficulty with tying into our storage was what again?
What I was hoping to do is a force main connection, put a grinder pump on the owner's property, and with a force main, you only have to go down 4 feet. And it doesn't matter the topography of the land, and you can run in the shoulder. This is a state highway, it's a Mass DOT highway. So I'd need permission from them as well, but I was gonna run in the shoulder. But DPW's not allowing, they had problems. They were allowing these individual force mains to be run, and in some cases, they may extend, from their property, past another property, past another property, past another property, and it was getting out of control from what I understand, and they were having difficulty. I think there were some problems, maybe with some other sites. They mentioned Berry Street. I don't know specifically. And whatever problem came up, it made them look at their regulations and basically say they're not going to allow those individual force mains anymore. So the only way an applicant could connect is if they tried to explore a gravity connection, which would be at least an 8-inch diameter pipe, and you'd have to make sure you get gravity flow. Usually you see that when people do subdivisions. If they want to develop 10 lots in a subdivision, the developer will pay to bring that sewer down, but there's some benefit. He'll get 10 home sites out of it. Yeah. For a gentleman like this who has a failed septic system and where it's over 400 feet away, there's nothing forcing him to do it, but it would just be too cost prohibitive. I'm not even sure if he could do it by gravity. But that's the basis of DPW's comments to me.
Looking at the various tightnesses, I mean, we've seen some other alternative systems that have been used to fix some of these things, but you seem pretty much in a pretty tight bind here. It's
I was going to look at some alternative technology type systems, but I've had good experience with the microfast systems in the past. There's other systems out there, and they allow you to take reductions in your field size and different things. I thought in this case where I get such a strong degree of denitrification, I thought it was a plus for this property. But he'll be entered into a yearly maintenance contract with the FAST people. The local rep for Microfast reviewed the plan as well and provided a letter to the Board of Health saying he was in review and the system met design criteria.
so when things are so close, how do we look at things like that? Do we ever do any checking that systems that are so close to various marginal areas that the systems are pumped annually? Do we ever do that?
We receive information from the company about pumping, or about, inspecting the systems.
But we don't have a specific requirement. I mean, we say,
There were-
at this point, we might say you have to sign on a contract, but we don't
Right.
follow it up.
Well, we do. I think Lisa has some type of, do you have a spreadsheet that you're checking these days for, okay, sorry.
They just
But
get
Dan,
filed.
this is Dan Ottenheimer.
Is
He
that
is,
the fast reports we get?
Yes.
yes,
Yeah, they come in and then we file them.
yeah. This is Dan Ottenheimer. He's with Mill River. And he's our engineer that reviews the plans.
So if I could share a few things to the chairman's questions. One, when a more sophisticated type septic system like the proposed here is used, there's a notice placed on the deed so that this owner and future owners know that they have a more sophisticated septic system that needs routine preventative maintenance visits. So that's one step. The second is to start off, they will be required to have, before they can build this, to have a contract in place with a company that'll come out on an annual basis and do a preventative maintenance visit. The third part, as the chairman alluded to, is ideally, the department would, and most towns don't do this, so don't feel bad, but would have a list of which properties have non-traditional systems, and we'll be able to check and make sure this happens on an annual basis. So it's something we could certainly work with you to bring that together, but there are not many in town that we've worked on over the past 10 or so years. So there's probably only just a handful. Yeah.
Are there any home limitations here as far as the number of rooms, bathrooms, and so forth?
It's, the town assessor has it as a 3-bedroom house, so the design criteria is based on 330 gallons per day. If there was an increase to that, it would be new construction, I wouldn't even be in front of you, and that would not have, there'd be no variance, there'd be no hardship in that case. So the design flow is based on the existing use and existing flow that's the historical flow.
So
for
if you
the
want to
property.
make it, say, a 4-bedroom home,
He could not. He'd have to put in a fully compliant septic system with a reserve area, and I think this board would be hard-pressed to approve something like that because they would need all sorts of variances, and you'd be creating your own hardship. The hardest thing with a variance is proving a hardship. It can stay a 3-bedroom, that's what I'm looking for, but he couldn't change it to 4.
Is there going to be a deed restriction that it will be, it can't be a 4-bedroom, it has to be a max of 3-bedroom?
I don't believe so. Dan, do
Well,
you?
we don't really do that.
We don't, okay.
The system has to match, the time that we've put deed restrictions is when there is a mismatch. We've allowed it as a variance, but then we put a deed on it. I mean, 110 per room is what the field size is supposed to match, so it's, I'll say presumed that the size of the field matches the size of the house. If you add onto the house, then the field has to fix them up, but we've never, I mean, they don't, if they get a new system come in, everything's in compliance, we don't say you can only have 4 bedrooms.
so it's in
The deed
compliance with
restrictions
3.
we've been is when there's a mismatch. But you mentioned a deed statement that this is a more sophisticated system. Is that part of your review? That's not here. Is that something you put in your report that carries over?
Yes, we've been working with the engineer to make sure it's in place. We have a draft version of it, and assuming this design gets approved, they would then finalize it, record it on the deed, send a copy of that to the health department, and that would need to be shown that it's recorded on the deed before someone could actually build this septic system.
So it would run with the title, and to your, it's a good question on the deed restriction on bedroom count is usually if you have a 3-bedroom house, but there's 9 rooms, and the people say we only have 3 bedrooms. Well, under Title V, that's technically a 4-bedroom house. So some people would come before this board on an upgrade and say we only have 3 bedrooms, even though it's a 9-room house, and then put a restriction on as 3 bedrooms. So if it was ever sold to you or me, they would know this is a 3-bedroom design, it could not be a 4. Is that correct, Dan? Okay.
Right, well, we've seen various versions of that where there's a bedroom that's designated as a sewing room or whatever, and it kind of goes to the deed, and they can't sell it as a 4-bedroom house. What purpose it goes to, we kind of can't control, but that's how it has to be shown.
Right.
So, Dan, you've worked together with this, and you're, have no specific comments on any of the variances here?
No, I think it's a very thoughtful approach to solving the wastewater problem at this site.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No, other than that, certainly it's one of the most complicated that I've seen, looking at systems as such for the last 20, 30 years or so. And I think a good job has been done.
Thank you.
So we want to make motions, maybe we can do the LUAs as one and the variances as another?
Yep.
Make a motion to approve the local upgrade approval request for 674 Turnpike Street. Do you want me to read all the requests? Or as listed?
No, as listed on the plan, because nothing has changed.
Okay, as listed on the plans.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Okay, make a motion to approve the variance requests as per the plans for 674 Turnpike Street.
Second.
Again, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
Great.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Yep, thank you.
That's complicated. That's complicated. That's complicated plan.
Very difficult site, and he did an amazing job.
When you turn in right at Hillside,
Yes, it's a little further down, it's like Street.
Oh, it's before Johnson. Oh, no, oh, I know. This is- Yeah, yeah. oh,
right on the other side is
It's like right where Al McGregor's.
Yes.
Yes.
So, no, I'm past our marks. I mean, there's some holidays though. Were we supposed to, is that over?
that change, that strip cut.
One of them trying to do a dog thing. Nice. I didn't know.
Start this one.
So, almost there. But yeah,
Okay, the next property we'll discuss is, again, tell me the address, please. I have a lot of papers, you have to sort through that.
1323 Salem Street?
Salem Street. We have plans on that.
just in front of the microphone.
They're both microphones, whichever you like. Smile because you're on TV, though.
I'm sure millions are watching.
Be surprised.
You're right.
I'll just give a brief introduction to why this is on the meeting tonight, but not on our official agenda. This was reviewed by Mill Rivers some time ago, They had some comments. It was sent back to Merrimack Engineering. It was returned to them with the adjustments. They did a re-review. There were still some things that needed to come to us. That it was returned from Mill River after our agenda closed, but because it was, I'll say, okayed by Mill River and the staff to come before the board, the fact that the agenda closed, we traditionally have not used that as a cutoff to say, no, we won't bring you before us as long as all the other formalities are in place. So that's why he's before us tonight.
Okay, I appreciate that very much, by the way.
We hope you brought hamburgers, so. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, for the record, my name is Jeff Green. I'm the current owner of 1353 Salem Street. I've been in the property for 22 years here in North Andover, and we'll be moving out soon. What happened is last fall, I went ahead and had a Title V test because I suspected that there weren't any problems with the system at the time, but just I knew that was going to have to be a process as far as getting the house ready for market. It did fail at that time. So what I did is started the process of hiring an engineer who started looking at the property, and of course we got into that nasty winter that we had, which kind of slowed everything up a bit. They actually did the soil test in the middle of the 2 storms in February, but they were able to get that done. But after the second storm, the survey was basically impossible to complete. So that's why we kind of had to wait till the spring, till the snow melted. So that's what got us to this point, why we're, timing-wise anyway. So as you can see in front of you, the design is complete. I believe the issue that's in front of us tonight is the borders around the leaching field are a little bit less than I guess the code requirements are. I'm told by the engineer that this is really the best place to put the septic system. The existing system is on the side of the house, which is well within the 100-foot buffer zone of the wetlands. So basically, he consulted me that we should probably stay away from that. And there's some ledge and some wooded area in the front of the house. So this is really the best place to put it. And the reason it's in this orientation and we didn't turn it 90 degrees to try to make it fit was because it would have impacted the driveway and the wall that's existing there. So this seemed to be the best location for it. And I'm told the grade that the possibilities were to move it back from the street a little bit to meet that requirement. That would have put it a little closer to the building structure, and that because of the grade, it'd be better to be away from the building structure, that it wouldn't have the impact because of the way the grading is to the street. And again, I'm deferring to the expertise of the engineer to consult me with all this. So that's about it.
So we're only being asked to give one local upgrade approval. That's the setback from the SAS to the street property line from 10 to 7 feet. Is that right? That's the only thing that we're being asked for?
Yes.
Okay. Can I just ask you to comment on the appropriateness of that?
I guess a 2-part answer. Generally, I think the design is, the local upgrade approval is probably prudent in this particular instance, based on the site conditions that the owner described and what is found there. There's also a procedural matter that involves notifying folks that may have not occurred in this particular instance. So that's something for the board to consider as well.
So so basically it's encroaching upon the town's property, which is the street.
Yes.
The street itself. Is the town aware that this has been requested of this board?
Well, that would be the applicant or their engineer, their responsibility to notify the town.
All right. Has the town been notified?
As far as I know, yeah, they have, but I don't have any verification of that.
I don't think they have. We don't have any.
Which board is, if you don't mind me asking, which division of the town are we talking
It would
about?
be the street, so it would be the DPW?
Yeah, probably DPW.
Okay.
Dan, do they normally approve that, or is that just a formality for the DPW to say, okay, thanks for letting us know, or is that something they would discuss?
I would hope they would take it on a case-by-case basis and say, do we have a concern here or not?
Okay.
So,
The engineer's telling me the grading is such that it wouldn't cause a issue with being abutted the street. in that manner.
But we just don't know what the town's interest is at this point.
Correct.
It's the town right away. Is
What-
it?
What is it? What is it?
What is the right-of-way isn't 10 feet, right? That's just the buffer zone for the code, for the distance requirement?
It just
It's like-
requires a 10-foot setback, so.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I would be comfortable approving this upgrade, but conditioning it on moving it through the DPW for
And have confirmation. and
Town.
confirmation, and then I would, essentially, I would move that, I would authorize the chairman of the board to give the board's approval as long as the DPW didn't have an objection. Would that be reasonable?
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's really nothing other than this one issue. But
Correct.
it's just that the abutter, which happens to be the town, hasn't been notified.
Correct.
So just to make sure that we don't have this come before us again, the abutters need to be notified, even if it's the town. So we'll have the town notified. If the town does not have an objection, then I would authorize the chairman to act on behalf of the board and then make the approval.
Right.
So that's my motion.
And you'll communicate that with
May
your
I ask if
engineer.
that's, I'm just asking because I don't know, will that affect the timing of the approval? I mean, somewhat?
I think that the chairman can.
I'm under a little bit of a, because the house isn't currently under contract.
No, it doesn't require another health board meeting. It just
Okay.
requires that communication to occur, and as long as the DPW chief doesn't object to this.
Well, it doesn't even require a non-objection, Dan. My understanding is it requires a 10-day notice, and basically, if you do an official notification to DPW tomorrow, the 10-day clock starts tomorrow. As long as we don't hear an objection within 10 days, you're set.
Okay.
If DPW objects within 10 days, then your engineer has to
Go back to the drawing board.
go to DPW. It's not us at that point.
Okay.
That's the abutter has, I think that the town happens to be an abutter, but there could be a time when it would be a neighbor
Sure.
that would have a concern because of what was on their property, and they don't want to be within the 10 feet. So it gives the abutter the right to object, if you will, but they have a 10-day period in which to formalize that, but then that becomes sort of the business between, once there's an objection raised, then our approval becomes moot to a certain extent until it's corrected. Am I?
Correct.
That's kind of the basics
Until
of
the
it.
concerns are satisfied.
Yes.
Right, okay.
But if your engineer does a formal notification to DPW
I
tomorrow,
mean,
that's,
he may have done that already. I didn't confirm that with him, but I don't know.
To the best of our knowledge,
If he did,
To the
we'll-
best of
we'll
our
deal with
knowledge,
it.
he is not.
Okay.
Right. Because typically it's done 10 days before the Board of Health meeting
Yeah.
tonight, in which case they could have presented their...
this request came to us in less than 10 days ahead of now, so
Right.
even if it happened the same time it came to us, there's still not even 10 days passed. But from what I understand, it's not happened, but when that official notice happens, and it's 10 days, and that's
Okay.
kind of like when a player goes on waivers.
Sure.
So what you need to do, Mr. Green, is get the proof of the certified mail and a copy of the letter that went to the DPW and get that to the Health Department office, so they have documentation that it went out.
Fair enough.
So you want to sort of formalize that, and we can move on that.
I'll move that we approve the local upgrade approval conditioned on the notification of the DPW and confirmation that there's no objection.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, if I make a suggestion, the motion might want to talk about the 10-day window, in which case that would, if there is no objection, that would make it clear.
Okay.
And if there is no objection in the 10-day window, then we would just go ahead and approve it.
Okay.
So just if I could may ask, so from a practical standpoint, if we do this letter tomorrow, 10 days passes, no objection, construction could start right thereafter?
Then our approval becomes
Becomes a
full permit, and
Okay.
you're ready to go, yes.
Great.
Is that 10 calendar days or 10 business days? 10 days.
I'll ask the expert over here.
It's an important 10-day question.
Yeah. Understood. 10 days is what the code says. That would be 10 calendar
Calendar
days.
days, okay. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, so we have a motion. Somebody seconded that?
Second?
Okay. Any further discussion? We had Dan make a comment. Are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get a letter posted tomorrow, hopefully.
We will. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then, Dan, we have another kind of separate matter, but maybe you'll stick around, we can talk a little bit afterwards, so. Ken, you want to come up? This is Ken Farbstein. He's a public health advocate. I'll let him do a little bit of a self-introduction, but he's here tonight because since we passed our new regulations, we've had some sort of open conversation at these meetings about consideration of looking at the age 21 in terms of cigarette smoking. So we had earlier in the year been approached by Dr. Hartman, who's at Children's Hospital and is one of the primary advocates of age 21 in Massachusetts. And so Ken is here to talk with us about it. Our intent tonight is that this is going to be an open conversation. We'll talk. He's going to give us some background. We can ask questions, but we really aren't planning to make a regulation change tonight. We kind of would be best to do that in a hearing, which based on what we talked tonight, we could do that as soon as next month under proper public notification. So we can get a consensus tonight, but I don't expect we'll really vote per se. So take it from there.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you. I'm Ken Farbstein. And so when we first emailed back and forth through Dr. Lester Hartman, I was doing the work pro bono as a volunteer. And at the beginning of May, I started working for Tobacco Free Mass as a grassroots coordinator. So I now get paid to do much the same work. So. And I'm sorry that Dr. Hartman and his colleague, Dr. Winikoff, Jonathan Winikoff of Mass General, couldn't come tonight. But they did write a letter of support, and I'd like to just give that to you. And I may have also, if I can approach the...
We'll take it over. Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
I believe I've emailed that to you, but I can, if not, I can email you an electronic copy. But it basically says that the Mass Medical Society has come out in favor of raising the age to 21, as has the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Mass Association of Boards of Health. They've all formally said that. And additionally, in the last month or two, the Institute of Medicine at the federal level has had a major project, a major report on studying what the effects of going to age 21 from 18 nationally would be. And so I included that, and I think I see some of them in front of you. So there's a 4-page executive summary of the Institute of Medicine report. And it was quite striking. They looked at 2 different mathematical models, and they found that over the lifetime nationally, that there would be about 223,000 fewer deaths if age 21 is made a national requirement. So the people who are now, young people at this age, that over the course of their entire lives, that it would save almost 250,000 lives to do that. So the IOM report was very favorable in our case. I read it, and I pulled out several different conclusions from it. They're just on a 1-page document that I can share with you. I did not send that, but it says that if you raise the age to 21, that will reduce the use of these products, especially actually among 14 to 17-year-olds, because those teenagers won't be able to get it from the 18 and 19-year-old older brothers or their high school seniors or something. So if you raise it to 21, then there's more of a separation. It's a much more safety factor built in for the younger teens. One of the conclusions was that increasing the minimum age of legal access to tobacco products will likely prevent or delay initiation of tobacco use by adolescents and young adults. There were 3 international studies that the Institute quoted, and they all reported decreases in underage smoking. So it's a great way to protect your young people. I'll stop for questions in a minute, because I want to see what issues are especially important to you all. But I just want to make the note that, and this is, so the point I made is also known very well to Big Tobacco. And in fact, in a Philip Morris report way back in 1986, that they had said raising the legal minimum age for cigarette purchase to 21 could gut our key young adult market. So what's middle-aged people and seniors don't start smoking and using tobacco and nicotine products. For the industry to continue making profits, they've got to get new users, means young users addicted, and so that's what they've done. And indeed, there was a quote from the Surgeon General's report in 2010 that tobacco industry has used every iteration of cigarette design to undermine cessation and prevention. So I think Ron Bogart had showed you some of the products, these little tiny things that are called cigars, which are just barely bigger than cigarette sized, and they're grape and strawberry and watermelon flavors. And did he show you the liquid nicotine that goes in the vaping? Also, those are all these flavors, So they're trying to addict your youth, and you've already acted to protect them, which I think is wonderful. I think if you can raise the age to 21, that'll protect even more of your young people here. I guess I can stop there. Lots more that I can say, but let me see what issues are most important to you all.
As you probably know, our regulations were updated, revised, and put in effect February 1st?
February 2nd, I think?
February 2nd.
Yeah.
We spent a considerable amount of time
Yeah.
prior to that discussing, and of the members of the board, I certainly was one that didn't want to do anything at all. I didn't want to interfere with what the law says, which is people can smoke. Even 18-year-olds can smoke. But since then, it's a complete about-face since then, because I've done a lot of research into it. I'm looking at an article right now, Wall Street Journal, dated March 13th of this year, and some of the things noted here, and I'll quickly go through it. You already mentioned, it said, increasing the age to 21 would eventually reduce the number of Americans who smoke by 12% and result in 249,000 fewer premature deaths related to cigarette smoking for people born between 2000 and 2019. It's a little bit higher than your number, but not much. It's consistent. It also went on to say that it would result in 286,000 fewer preterm births and 438,000 fewer babies born with low birth weights. And finally, it said, and I'm just going to skip around here, nearly 9 out of 10 smokers who first light up do it by the age of 18. As I believe everyone here knows, and perhaps some people that are watching right now, Andover, the age is 21. Yeah. Lawrence, the age is 21. Yeah. And it certainly is the direction that the communities are going. I wish the state would increase the age to 21, but they haven't, probably never will. So I'm supportive of the review that we're going to have to take it up to 21.
Great. And Methuen and Danvers have also voted more recently in just in the last few weeks to go to comprehensive reform, including 21 as well. So,
what really swayed me is prior to changing the regulation in North Andover, there were so many tobacco products that had flavors in it. Yeah. For one and only one reason. I don't care what the tobacco lobby says. It's to attract the kids. Adults don't want flavors to the extent that the kids do. And I'm saying, no.
I carry these flavors, these things with me, and you can smell. Sometimes I'll open them, so people, if they're not familiar with it already, like you are, they'll smell, it's really a very strong scent to entice.
It smells really
kids.
good.
Oh, they're so
Really
sweet.
good.
Yeah, if you have a sweet tooth, it's, yeah. It's,
I'd say I'm sorry. I was going to say, I'd say most adults most adults probably wouldn't crave hyper-sweet products
Yeah.
like a teenager or a child would. And when I smelled it, when Ron passed it around, I mean, it was so black and white that it's geared towards teens, not even 18-year-olds. It's geared towards kids. And it was just too obvious. I guess if you reach age 21, hey, do what you want.
Yeah.
You want to smoke, smoke. You want to drink, do what you want. But 18, the pressure and I guess the access is still very easy.
Frank, you had mentioned many months ago that these kids that start smoking young, they're the ones that become addicted. And what are those numbers? I forgot, but they're staggering for the kids at 16, 18 years old that
Well,
smoke.
I think the
It
science
remains.
very clearly states that those people at that age are very vulnerable to addiction, and they're vulnerable to peer pressure. I mean, we actually had this discussion on a different level with regard to voting age at town meeting a couple of weeks ago. But it's, to me, as a medical doctor, it's a no-brainer. And I think that the one objection that we had talked about raising to 18 was the people serving in the military. But even the military is going smoke-free. And so I don't think that that's actually an exception that we need to even be considering anymore. And I would feel more comfortable with North Andover not being an island of 18-year-old purchasing in a local area where, Methuen, Lawrence, Andover, all the surrounding towns are going at 21. I think this is something whose time has come, and I think that there's not really much reason to object. I did read the information about Methuen, especially from the merchants, talking about people going to New Hampshire, and we're not really a border community. We're not that far away, but, I don't think that that's as much of a concern here as it might be up there. So I really don't see any reason why this shouldn't sail through. And I'd be surprised if we get much pushback even from the merchant community.
I believe the merchant community has been quite cooperative since we updated the regulation.
Great.
Correct me if I'm mistaken, no problems at all?
No, just some clarifications and, interpretation, but absolutely no pushback as we're using that word.
Now, CVS,
Right?
no tobacco. What are the other pharmacy stands? Any movement there at all, or, do you know?
We hope so. Haven't seen it yet, but it's...
Medicine shop.
We need some
They're not
data
going
from
to be selling
CVS.
tobacco anymore.
Which one?
Medicine shops.
Ah, is that a chain? I'm not familiar
They're
with
a
the...
franchise.
A franchise?
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll have that kind of effect. The others will have to follow. We'll see. I don't know. Dr. McMillan,
Yeah,
just...
some of the...
Oh, sure.
Some of the components of the edit that we did to the regulation last year were things that have been court tested. Has there been any court test of this anywhere of the change?
Of the going up to 21?
Yeah.
Well, there's been no legal challenge to it that I know of, so I'm not aware of that. If so,
Is this started to become a groundswell fairly recently? I mean,
yeah, it has, and Massachusetts is really, I think, a leader in the nation. So there are actually 63 towns now. Earlier this week, Gill and Walpole raised their age to 21.
How many towns you say?
63 in Massachusetts. So they now cover about 1.5 million Massachusetts residents.
Including the city of Boston.
And not yet. That's
Boston or Cambridge?
Cambridge is one of the 63. Right, they have the comprehensive review. Yeah, there's a map that I had sent around. Now, that was as of January, so it's a little outdated already. Cambridge is one of the more recent towns that went to comprehensive reform with age 21, but Boston is, we want to get Boston to go as well.
You said
have
comprehensive reform a couple times. What is that?
Well, I think that actually you have, in my mind, you have everything except, you have everything in the comprehensive
Except
reform
age 21.
except for age 21. So those include things like banning the flavors and the cigar packaging and pricing, right, and the smoke-free.
Talk to us about
Yeah.
it.
Right.
We've got a good regulation. The only thing we're missing is the age.
It's very good. Yeah, I have a, thank you, Susan, you had sent me a copy of it. And it, yeah, it looks pretty comprehensive to me with the, you know, except for that, except for age 21 itself. And Dr. McMillan, just to come back to a point, you know, you mentioned, you know, the, well, a couple different things I wanted to speak to, but one of which was traveling. Will kids travel to, you know, to get it? How far will they go? So there was an article written about that in the American Journal of Public Health by Rietzel et al. And it just said when customers need to travel a significant distance to obtain tobacco products, they are likely to decrease their use. So that's, I mean, if you need that, the backing for that. And, you know, as you suggested, that a lot of the recent brain science has described how there are actually changes that occur in the adolescent brain if they're using nicotine. And it makes addiction much more likely. So there's a review article, and if you want, I can share this with you. It's called E-Cigarettes, a Scientific Review in the journal Circulation. A medical journal, and the authors state nicotine is a highly addictive substance with negative effects on animal and human brain development, which is still ongoing in adolescence. So from what I understand from Dr. Hartman, that the cortex is the part with the judgment is in the front of the brain. That's like the last part to acquire the judgment, as I kind of see from my 19-year-old daughter. So that, and there are 4 citations in the article to that. So any of you who might have teenagers might already know that, but or sense it somehow.
Yes.
But
I don't have the statistics in front of me now, but I had read that these e-cigarettes are becoming a lot, I mean a lot more popular. And of course, it's a different way of inhaling nicotine. What I find frustrating is that if you have a computer and so forth, you get these coupons, and I just hope that is done away with.
I know, that's a very tough thing to enforce. But I think in your regs, it says no coupons, I think, and it says that that the sales
you can get them through your computer.
And, right, it's very So it's very it's like I think it's great that you have the regulation. It's and that may be that will have to be fought out at a higher level somehow to be policed effectively, throughout the state. That's a toughie. But
You can even buy these cigarettes on computer. All you have to do is say you're 18 years old.
and which is,
I believe.
right, because I was thinking about that. It's like, to get a drink, you have to show your ID, right? And it has your birth date on it and your photo, right? And if it's or this way, I mean, it's pretty obvious. But so it's pretty hard to, to get that ID, illegally. Whereas all you have to, if you just have to click a box that says yes, I'm 18 or yes, I'm 21, that's a much lower threshold. There's a much lower bar to like you suggest.
Do you know what progress is going on from the Attorney General when she announced some regulations on e-cigarettes in the state?
No, I don't. I can find out. They did have a hearing just a month or 2 ago. What is it specifically that I can find out for you about that?
Well, no, just when several towns were in the midst of, when we were in the midst of talking about electronic cigarettes, there was a big press release that the Attorney General was going to look at developing regulations. I think, as I understand it, the state really has no regulations on electronic cigarette sales at all.
Right. Right. That's my understanding also, that these products are so new. It's just really in the last 2 or 3 years. And so now, the youths, that teenagers are using these vaping and all these products more than they're smoking the combustible smoking tobacco. It's gone that much in that direction. But maybe I can find out some more about that and send that to you, if you like. I'm not I don't exactly know what the Attorney General has been deciding.
I don't know that it will affect our thought process. It seems like, Joe, when you talk about the state, I think one thing we saw with smoking in public institutions was it took a lot of towns putting it into their regulations before the state would do it. Maybe this is that kind of thing also, that a certain threshold of towns have to go to 21 before the
Yeah.
state will do it.
It's called a
That's how
tipping
the-
point.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It's called a tipping point.
Exactly.
I think
and
we're there.
If we, hopefully so. We have about 22% or so, 24% of the state residents are covered now, so hopefully that's getting close to the tipping point. The same, Dr. Trowbridge, as you mentioned, so now there's no smoking in restaurants, for example, and the way that came about, that was a state law, but first a bunch of towns passed it, town by town. And so that's that's a case in point of what you're suggesting.
It took some very brave Board of Health members, because
Yeah.
it was a very contentious issue, and serious threats and things were made against board members in various communities, not just, so it was a moment that boards of health, some took, some decided to wait. We were somewhere in the middle. We weren't the first, but we weren't the last either.
Yeah,
So
sounds hard fought.
they did good.
What is happening in Boston? Roughly 680,000 people live in Boston. Certainly, if they approved the increase to 21, that would take it a lot closer to the tipping point. What's happening there right now?
Well, there's no public health commissioner right now. It's a vacant spot. And I think so the commission, which is their Board of Health, is a little reluctant to go forward with the regs without their commission chair being on the job.
As a political appointee, that's what Mayor Walsh will appoint.
Right. It's in the mayor's, yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we discussed this in a great detail over the past year, and it took us a year to come up with that regulation. A lot of this stuff we're pretty familiar with. I think that I haven't heard anything that says that we shouldn't do this.
I was going to ask, if you've been traveling around, have you heard what you would, maybe a little unfair way to phrase it to you, but what you might consider to be some kind of a valid objection to making the change? I think I know the answer in advance of the question.
Well, the pushback, I'll tell you, how about if I'll tell you what objections we've heard, and I won't evaluate whether I believe them or not. Okay, we'll do it that way. Sometimes we hear, so the retailers are increasingly willing to go to age 21. They kind of concede that, which has been a nice surprise. They tend to fight the flavor ban more. Sometimes and they'll but that you already have that, and it sounds like your retailers are more or less okay with that, from what you say. Yeah.
They didn't speak up. So
Yeah.
they had open hearings.
No news is good news.
That's
you know.
interesting. You say that they're more receptive to increasing the age to 21, but not the ban on flavor?
Well, because the flavors are a new and growing product for them, they're making lots of money from, and the way that Big Tobacco prices it, and the way that they arrange their business relationships with the convenience store owners, that the profit margin for the e-cigs, the vaping stuff, all those flavors and everything, the cigars, are much higher. One convenience store owner said they were 33% versus about 15% profit margin for the cigarettes, for the old-fashioned cigarettes. So Big Tobacco is incentivizing the convenience store owners to sell these sexy new products, and with all they use lots of beautiful women in the ads and stuff. It's just drenched, with sexuality. And so they really want to grow that market, which, as you say, as we've been talking about, that market has been growing a lot. The smoking cigarette market is at a steady state, and it's not cool. A lot of kids nowadays think it's not cool to smoke.
Probably shrinking in the U.S. a little bit, isn't it, really?
Traditional
cigarettes.
In the long term, right. So in the long term, the overall rate is about half of what it was, 50 years ago. And the rate among youths has been declining. But then when you look at the use of all tobacco products, so the rate has been declining, but it just started to kick up lately with all these e-cigarette, with all the vaping stuff, the flavors, these candy cigar, what I call candy cigars, they're cigars technically. So it's been tipped up, but that's, so the retailers tend to fight the flavors more than the age 21.
Logic would say that as the usage goes down, the profit would go down. But that's really not the case.
Well, I mean, the profitability per unit of sale, it's a 33% profit. So if they, I don't really know what the prices are per se, but if it's something that would be $10, then about $3.33 of that is profit to the retailer. Whereas if $10 worth of cigarettes, that the retailer only profits about $1.50 on that. So the incentive is for the retailer to like put a lot of shelf space for all these new products.
Put that front and center.
And they put that front and center. So I don't know if you've seen photos of that. I have, but I mean, or if you go into convenience stores here. Well, actually, you've banned them though as of February, so you don't have them anymore. You won't see them here. Thank goodness. So I think it's wonderful that you went to all, that you did your homework. You already adopted most of the comprehensive regs at this point. But the other objection that we hear sometimes from people is that if they're old enough to fight in the military, that you should be old enough to use these products. And you've mentioned hearing that to some extent already. I mean, I can give our response to that if you like. So we say, well, rental car companies will only rent to drivers who are 25 years and older. Well, why is that? Well, it's something, they believe they're about the judgment of youthful drivers, and thrill-seeking behavior and so forth. The drinking age, was 18. Well, it was 21, and we dropped it to 18, and then we saw all these car accidents happen and deaths from alcohol, and so we raised it back to 21. So there, you can't run for Congress, run for elective office until you're, in your 20s or older, and so forth. And all these things are examples of you can't gamble until age 21 in a casino, typically, right? So there are a lot of things that are pegged at 21 already. That's we. And did I send you? I might have sent a copy of a letter from a U.S. Marine, Max Rangel. Who's sometimes we will respond with that as well. I think that's very well said.
And generally, the 21 is across all tobacco products. I mean, that's
right.
That's kind of a no-brainer question, I guess, but that's the concept here.
Exactly. Right, because so few people start after age 21. So and in fact, most if you look at smokers now and you ask them, 90% of them say that they regret ever having started, and so they'll typically try to quit multiple times, but nicotine is so addictive that they find it very hard to quit. So, it's like if they're older and wiser, they're looking back, gee, they kind of regret having started as a young person, because most of them started as a young person. So if you can just get people to 21 and then they make their own decisions, you'll really save a lot of their lives.
Yeah, consistent with what it is said in this article that I referenced in the Wall Street Journal. It says more than 70% of Americans and 58% of smokers support raising the purchase age to 21.
It has a lot of general support, and in fact, Brian Lagasse in Methuen, he's in Methuen, right, had done a survey himself, a survey monkey. I don't know how scientific it was, but he got 600 responses in the local community to the general population of his town of Methuen, and his figures are very much similar to those. In fact, he asked the same question, and so some people didn't answer, but of the ones who did answer, it was about 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 who favored raising it to age 21.
So we're going to have a hearing next month?
June?
So what I think we should do is we should have a hearing on a specific amendment. So rather than just sort of having the same conversation, I'm not hearing any debate on the question here, but to do it properly and formally, we should
Amend the regulation.
amend the regulations, and maybe
By-
we can work with Ron to look at our regulation and really add in this one, we'll call it a clause perhaps.
I think it's just very simple. You're going to amend by substitution of age 18 with age 21.
And there's...
Do we have age included even now? Because it's, right now, it's a state laws. I mean, what we did is...
We have 18
If I-
for e-cigarettes.
Yeah, if I can speak to that, please. So there are regs that, so we work with DJ Wilson and Cheryl Spara. I don't know if either of you...
Yes, we
they-
do.
they-
They've been-
have Both
They've
of
been
them,
here.
or one or the other?
Cheryl Sparr's been here.
Cheryl? So...
DJ was here one of the times when we were looking at the regulations before.
And so, so they've formed some draft regulations, and so if I can approach that.
Sure.
So, in section D is the part about raising the legal age to 21. So I'm not sure how much of, so it's here, and I'm not sure how much of this is also required to accompany that. But either one of Cheryl or DJ would be happy to, could certainly advise you of that. So
This
kind of
is
template.
an edit into our, oh, no, this is a sample over,
It's very
okay.
similar-
All right.
It's very similar to yours,
Mhm.
and it's kind of a generic, it's like a template or kind of a standard set of comprehensive regs that they have. And I think yours, as I was reading yours, and then I read this, and it looked much the same, except for this part
Right.
about the age.
Well, signage, we already have
Do you have okay,
things
maybe
about
it's-
signage in ours, so,
Okay, so it may just be that one or two sentences.
Okay.
But, I'm not a lawyer, so.
okay,
Sure,
so,
Ron can help us with that.
yeah, this is pretty straightforward, so perhaps I can work with Ron, and we'll get this into an amendment form. We can,
It's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
either an amendment by addition, just basically.
yeah.
And the signage would have to comply with the new age. That's-
You have some notes, do you need this one back, or?
You can take that.
Okay. Maybe we'll be the tipping point, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Boston will say, look what North Andover's done.
Oh,
Right.
they listened.
All right, well, very, very good, thank you.
Okay, well,
Thank
thanks
you
for
very
thanks for
much.
listening, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming up.
Sure, happy to.
So we'll contact the retailers in a similar way with a
Right, so we have
letter?
to
Is that
watch
what
what
you'd
our,
like to?
Well, similar to how we did the other regulation, according to our, again, I think we're not required to have a hearing like this, but it's generally been sort of best practice to do it anyway, so there can be no objections later on down the road. So we'll leave the notification up to you, but we sent letters to all the the holders of cigarette sales permits when we did the regulation review, so I would do something similar to that. Remember, we did something at the end, right? We had a regulation in place, we did one edit, am I remembering the wrong thing?
I don't recall.
I'm not sure.
We said we're going to consider one thing only.
Oh, how you ran the hearing, is that what you're saying? It was in parts, because you wanted to approve one part and then not yeah.
Right, we approved one part, but then there was something that came up, and we wanted to just consider, there was a chapter,
It was
like a
six
chapter
or something,
7,
six
6 or
or
7,
seven. Yeah.
and we said,
Right,
we
we
made
did.
it
Right,
out.
so you got everything else
We
passed
passed everything
once,
as a consent.
and then
Yes.
discussed just the flavors.
Yes.
One,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
one
what you
area.
did, so.
So I
So we
I
did
get
it-
what
we
you're
did-
saying.
we
You don't
did it
wanna
one-
hold- You don't want to open the whole regulation up to
No.
discussion. So the only thing that we'll be discussing is the age.
Correct.
Is this one amendment
Is this
correct?
one amendment?
Yes.
So, yes.
That'll be the subject of the public hearing, so we'll work soon with Ron to get this included, sort of included as an amendment, and then you can publicize that.
Right. The remainder of the regulation is not open to further discussion.
Right.
So it'd be whatever
Yeah.
section the age is in.
Right.
And the signage that would correspond to the age, and that would be it, I would imagine.
Do you envision the public hearing being the next Board of Health meeting?
Why not?
Why not?
Can you be there?
Can you be here?
Be there?
That's a good question.
Okay,
I
good.
don't know why not. We're not required notification-wise to have longer than a month, and this isn't anything particularly complicated, so I think we could make haste.
And generally, you don't like to have hearings in July or August because of, you know, for
Right,
people's
this would be the
input, they might be on
25th of June
vacation
then.
and such, so.
The fourth Thursday of the month, right?
Yes, yes.
All right, I think we do it next month.
June 25th, yeah.
June 25th.
25th.
Depending upon the outcome of that public hearing, do you envision a motion?
I think we
If
would
it
close
come-
the hearing and then.
Yeah, we close the hearing, then we could,
Okay.
if a motion comes up, yes.
And we can act.
Sounds prudent, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Any other announcements that we don't have formally listed? Okay.
I'd like to say, happy anniversary to my wife, Joan, is 38 years married.
Congratulations.
That wasn't listed.
Is that today, Larry?
Well, it's at 12:01
You're in
a.m.
trouble if it's
So
today.
a few more hours from now, but we can't.
Very
meet-
good.
We can't meet tomorrow, so, you know, on the Board of
Yeah.
Health. so.
Well, because this is publicized
That's right.
on the TV, I'll clap, but I may have some things to say to you.
That's private, that's right.
Be kind. Be kind.
Very good. 38 more to come, right, Larry?
Yeah, right. I might be in a nursing home by then, Tom.
Well,
I
very
will say
good.
there's one thing, though, you know, I just mentioned TV. The town meeting that we just had, you can't listen to it on TV on Comcast. It's so garbled. There's that buzz in the background. I've spoken to so many people in the town, and we still have to deal with this nonsensical reception through Comcast. I understand the Verizon's not
That's fine.
better.
That's
Computers are better, but not Comcast. Literally unwatchable for all meetings in the town.
Yeah, you have told people that.
Unbelievable.
I
I
thought it
don't
was
know why
where
we're wasting our
where
money.
the microphones are, because you have the air handler moving, and you can see there's a microphone hanging there, and there's the air handler is moving stuff. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. It's a buzz. It's a buzz in the background. And I know several people that tuned in to the town meeting, tuned it right off.
Yeah.
It's just Board of Selectmen, whomever you listen to.
Right.
And yet it continues, which says to me that no one really cares. Because in this day and age, there shouldn't be that type of problem.
Well, Comcast doesn't.
Well,
No one cares.
well, if the town really cared, it would be addressed. And it hasn't been. Just saying it as it is.
I think they have a cable committee.
I have no comment. I have no comment.
Okay.
All right. I'll try at my house. I haven't listened to my own meeting in a while. All right. We have no correspondence to put forward tonight. We've handled all the business. Do I hear movement to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.